Hi, this is how to activate and set up a supplemental feed in Google Merchant Center Next, as well as how to optimize your product feed using the supplemental feed. So diving straight into it in Google Merchant Center Next, in order to use the supplemental feed feature, you first have to activate that. So to activate that, go up to the cog icon up at the top here and go to add-ons, and we'll need to activate this advanced data source management add-on. Just to reference, once you've activated that add-on, it'll appear in your add-ons and not in Discover anymore. So just hit add on that, add, and that'll add that to the your add-ons tab. Then from here, you can either click on go to advanced data source management, or to get there, if you just in the Google Merchant Center Next itself, hit the cog icon up at the top here and then hit data sources, and that'll take you into that same section. Now, as you can see here, you've got two options over here. So you've got primary sources and then supplemental sources. If you haven't enabled that add-on, you'll only see primary sources in this section. So go to supplemental sources, and we're going to need to add a supplemental product data feed. So just hit add supplemental data feed. And from here, we are going to be using a Google Sheet. This is the recommended approach for this. Essentially what this does is it allows you to have a Google Sheet on the side, and any data you want to override in your main product feed, you can simply override that data by adding it into the Google Sheet, and then it automatically pulls into your product feed in Google Merchant Center Next. So just select use Google Sheets and then hit use template up at the top here, and it'll ask you to verify your account. So just go through that process. Once you've verified your account there, it'll open up a new Google Sheet for you, and you can read through this template, but it does get a little bit confusing in terms of the layout here. So what I'd recommend is just delete this, or just add a new sheet here and delete this first template sheet. It's just easier to work on a clean sheet like this. So essentially how the supplemental feed works is, again, it overrides data in your main product feed with the data that you enter into this spreadsheet. So how the Merchant Center matches the data in your Google Sheet with the data in the product feed itself is through the item ID of your product. So just to show you what this looks like. So as you can see here, we've got a product for this specific brand. And if we just look at the data in this product feed section here, you'll see, unfortunately, this will be blurred out, but you'll see this product ID over here. If you have a Shopify store, that'll start with Shopify AU or Shopify US as your item ID. And this is a unique product identifier that's given to that specific product by the Merchant Center. Another place to find this item ID is if you scroll right down to the bottom of your product. Over here, you'll see additional details. So open that up. And then if you scroll down under additional details, you'll see the raw data source attributes section here, pulling from the content API feed, which is the primary feed that pulls automatically from Shopify into the Merchant Center. And this is obviously the feed that we're going to be overriding with the data that we add into this Google Sheet. So just open up this raw data source attribute down here. And the main thing to note here is that, as you can see here, we've got the attribute column and then we've got the value column. Now, the item ID or the ID attribute is again the unique ID that allows the Merchant Center to match the data that you put into this Google Sheet with the data that's in the Merchant Center. And the only way to match those two products or match those two pieces of data is through the unique product identifier. So just to reference, the first column you'll always have in your supplemental feed is the ID column. Now, in your Google Sheet, when you're referencing a certain set of data, you reference that by the heading that you add into the column. Now, for the item ID column, you use the ID title. Where do you get these title names from? You get them straight from this raw data source attribute section here. So this attribute name here, as you can see, so ID, title, description, etc. this is the column title that you use in the Google Sheet itself. So just copy and paste this title directly into your Google Sheet if you want to reference that specific attribute in the product feed. If those two attributes differ, there will obviously be a mismatch between your Google Sheet and the Merchant Center, and it'll give you an error. So again, we'll take the ID attribute and we'll copy that item ID value and paste that in the ID column over here. So just to reference, I have pasted that in there. I've just clipped that column down just that it keeps the sheet nice and neat. Now, let's say, for example, we want to override another attribute in the product feed over here. So let's say, for example, in this case, we want to override the title attribute. So we're going to copy that title attribute, add that into the column header in our Google Sheet, and then just opening this column, we'll need to now add the new title into our Google Sheet. And this is how you optimize your product feed in the Google Merchant Center using a supplemental feed source. Essentially, you can list the different products that you want to edit in your supplemental feed. So let's say you want to edit 5 or 10 products, whatever. You copy those item IDs into this item ID column or the ID column. You then provide the new value. So as you can see, under the value column here, these are the current values that are pulled in through this feed. And then these would be the new values that are pulled in alongside those item IDs. So just for this example, let's just call this test headline, just so that we can see how this gets pulled into the Merchant Center. So as you can see here now, I've now assigned this, this value and ID so that the supplemental feed can go and match it in the Merchant Center now. So we've set this up. We can just rename the supplemental feed as well. And you can obviously add that wherever you feel most relevant in your Google Drive. Now we'll need to sync the supplemental feed into the Merchant Center. So if you head back to the supplemental feed section here, again, you would have used that template button there. So you can just hit continue, and then we'll now need to select the primary data source that we want to be editing or overriding with the supplemental feed. So again, we were using, or we want to edit the Content API primary feed. So in this section here, we're going to choose Content API, again in AU and in English. So select that feed and then create data source. And as you can see here, we've now got our supplemental feed set up. So we can name this supplemental feed here. So if you go to data source setup, you can name that supplemental feed down here. So we can just call that sub feed in this example, then hit save. And now we can head back out into this section. As you can see here, we've got no updated product yet. So we've added info into the sheet here, but this info hadn't been pulled in. But as you can see now, it's just been pulled into the Merchant Center. So as you can see here, all the products have been matched up correctly. If you've added an incorrect item ID over here, this is where you'll see the error in the supplemental feed. And we should be able to now see the change that has been made to this product in the Merchant Center itself. So if we go back to the product itself, and just to reference, this can take a bit of time to sync through. So if for whatever reason you're having issues, just hit update there and give that 5 to 10 minutes to actually pull through into the Merchant Center. So as you can see here now, the supplemental feed should have pulled through correctly. As you can see, it's matched those products correctly. If you head back to the product itself, as you can see here, the headline of this actual product has been overridden with that product name that we added into the supplemental feed, which was test headline. Now, just for reference, I'm going to show you how to remove a supplemental feed if need be, because obviously in this case, we don't want this headline being test headline. So if you head out into the Merchant Center and then head back to data sources up at the top over here, you'll obviously head back to this page. Now, instead of going to the supplemental sources, because as you can see here, if we try and delete this, you can see that the data source is linked. So we can't delete this supplemental feed until the data source has been unlinked from the primary feed. So how to unlink this, go to the primary source tab, go to the content API feed, because this is the feed we are actually editing with that supplemental feed. Then head over to attribute rules, and we'll see that this rule here takes from the supplemental feed first, and then if the value, or if a value hasn't been taken from the supplemental feed, it'll then pull from the content API feed, which is how the supplemental feed overrides the content API feed. So to edit this and to remove the supplemental feed, we need to remove this rule first of, for the Merchant Center to pull from the supplemental feed. So remove that rule, and as you can see, it'll only take from content API. Once you've done that, hit Save as Draft, and then you'll need to just apply that change up at the top over here. Then from there, once you've done that, you might need to give this 5-10 minutes. Then you can go back to the Data Sources tab, go back to the Supplemental Feed tab, and you should be able to delete the supplemental feed now once it's been unlinked from the primary feed. So we'll just give this 5 to 10 minutes and then come back here and remove this. So as you can see here, if we just hit delete now, we've got delete supplementary feed, and we'll remove that from the Merchant Center. So that's everything I wanted to mention in this video. Again, just to reference, a key thing to keep in mind is any attributes you want to edit using a supplemental feed, you need to add the correct heading into your Google Sheet, and you get that correct heading from using the direct attribute heading in the primary feed